DeMeco Ryans met with the media today. He had a lot of interesting things to say, and there was a lot of interesting dialogue about him before he even arrived in the building. Mike McDaniel had some good things to say about DeMeco Ryans. Typically, when you ask someone about one of their former coworkers, it's basically just like the generic type of praise, but it could have been a recommendation letter from Mike McDaniel, who I didn't even think about. Actually knew DeMeco when he was here in Houston, when McDaniel was on Gary Kubiak's staff. Actually ended up getting fired from the staff because he overslept. That was before he went to alcohol rehab. A lot of people don't know that about Mike McDaniel, but that was one of his hard lessons. And then I think he had the intervention or whatever in Atlanta. There was some sort of thing. It's actually a really cool story, but he's known DeMeco for a really long time. He said some really nice things about him. John Lynch said some good things about him. And then you had Carthon and some other guys. And we finally heard from the man himself. By the way, it is the Locker Room on YouTube, #1 source for daily Texans digital content. I'm your host, Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610, home of the Texans. We talk to the players. We talk to the coaches. We talk to the owners. We keep you plugged into this team, which has become interesting. It's not necessarily an A topic. I don't anticipate NFL Live leading with the Texans, but the joke that the Texans have been the last couple of years, that's gone, and there's at least some interest in large part, and it really probably for the most part because of DeMeco Ryans, who started out his press conference being asked by John McClain, who told us he was going to ask him this question. Are you going to call the defense? DeMeco would not say. He said they're still in the process of trying to figure this out, said that he trusts Matt Burke, said that they have a lot of the same philosophies, and wouldn't say whether or not he's going to call the defense. Quite honestly, I don't know whether he knows if he's going to call the defense yet. That might be something that they go through in training camp. Maybe in the preseason, there's like some reps where DeMeco calls the game for one game and then Burke, and then they try to figure it out. I don't know that this is like a Patriot South type of thing that we become used to, where you're just not saying stuff, you know it, and you're getting petty. Hell, even a Lovie Smith thing, the competitive advantage, that type of petty BS. I think it's just as much as they're going to try to figure it out and figure out how they work with each other, and that could be something that they figure out in training camp. I would rather him not call the defense. I think it's just hard to call a defense and then focus on everything else. And I think unlike, Lovey last year, I think DeMeco kind of has a little bit more to offer the offense. I think he has a good eye. I think he's kind of one of those like motivational guys that you want him to be hands-on, walk around coach, for lack of a better term. But McClain asked him that question. He wouldn't say whether or not he's going to call the defense. And quite frankly, I don't think it's a secret. I just think it's possible that DeMeco does not know whether or not he's going to call the defense. Speaking of Nick Caserio, DeMeco talked about Nick Caserio, said Bracey repeated what Caserio said, that the relationship's been great, said that, there hasn't been much time off. They've been grinding. They think about things the same way. Talked about, just how pleasant the experience was. I think Randy McElvoy of KPRC2 asked him the question. Randy's an OG and a journalist. He asked DeMeco about Caserio, and then he asked Caserio about DeMeco, and then he asked DeMeco about Caserio. That's the OG angle right there. I expect we'll probably see that on Sunday. That's good stuff by him. DeMeco was asked about Brandon Cooks, said that he has spoken with him. Won't say whether, what they're going to do. Kind of kept that a little bit close to the vest. He was also asked about Jimmy Garoppolo, and man, he had some good things to say about Jimmy G. Look, I don't think Jimmy G is a quality starting quarterback in the NFL. We do know, though, the history. That's the one thing that DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio have the most in common when it comes to decisions. And we're kind of learning about these guys. We don't know what they're going to do in the draft. We don't know what their free agent philosophy is going to be. But when it comes to one thing that they do have in common, they have history with Jimmy Garoppolo. They have a lot of history with Jimmy Garoppolo. What they think of that history, how things have changed since that history, I don't know. But DeMeco had a hell of a lot of things, a lot of good things to say about Jimmy Garoppolo. So what does that mean? Maybe he's just being nice. But Jimmy G, the story's not going to go away. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. As far as the quarterback itself, I thought this was kind of the quote of the press conference talking about the quarterback. And we don't know if they're going to really put this to practice. A lot of times people say stuff and their actions don't back up what they say, especially in this game. But the one thing that we do know about the offensive system here, at least the one that has been here for damn near a decade and over a half decade with BOB, is there was a lot of times where it felt like they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. With Deshaun Watson, they were trying to turn Deshaun Watson into Tom Brady, and Deshaun Watson has this skill set, and you're basically trying to still make him go to the line of scrimmage, recognize the play. It was basically like he was taking a test, like Tom Brady. And in that Patriot system, there's really an example of one quarterback being successful in it, and the other guys who've tried to run it, they have similar skill sets. This scheme, the West Coast, the Kubiak / Shanahan scheme, you have examples of quarterbacks with multiple skill sets succeeding, specifically in the Kyle Shanahan form of it. Kyle Shanahan, you go back to Robert Griffin III, they built the system around the quarterback, which is what DeMeco Ryans said that he wanted to do, build the system around the quarterback. You've seen Kyle Shanahan have Matt Ryan, more of a pocket guy. You saw him with Brian Hoyer. You saw him with Jimmy Garoppolo. You've seen him with Brock Purdy. And you saw him be willing to trade for Trey Lance, who, doesn't have those same skill sets. So there's a proven track record, at least of the Kyle Shanahan form of this system, of trying to take a quarterback, not handcuff yourself by looking for specific skills. Obviously, there's boxes to check that every coach has, no matter what. But they've been able to, they being Kyle Shanahan and other coaches around the league, they've been able to take this system and make it work with quarterbacks with differing skill sets. I think the RG3 example is the best of seeing it successful. I know it was a short run, but man, it was a magical run. If you go back and look at just the way that they were incorporating zone reads with him and Alfred Morris, and the way it worked. Obviously the shelf life kind of died off, but it was a masterpiece. And then you would see Kyle do it with other types of guys in his other stops, the MVP year with Matt Ryan. Whether or not Bobby Slowick is identical to that, who knows? But anyone who's been here and had to witness, the closed-minded system that was witnessed before, you've got to at least appreciate the fact that DeMeco is saying this. So I like it. I like to hear that. I know a lot of people like to hear that. As far as free agents, DeMeco was asked about San Francisco 49ers. He talked about familiarity. Sometimes it is good to work with guys that you're familiar with, which led to immediate my mentions and the text line, the names, Charles Omenihu. Could Charles Omenihu come back? Could Jimmy Ward come here? Does Jimmy Ward fit with Jalen Petrie? Who would be the free safety? Obviously, Jimmy Ward's probably more of a free safety. We saw Petrie play some free and strong last year. Could Petrie go back to strong and have Ward play free? I don't know, but I do anticipate some 49ers being here. Now, what caliber of player are you going at the top with the Jimmy Wards and the Omenihus? Are you going more towards the bottom? Could Jimmy Garoppolo be one of those? I don't know, but I didn't see anything that led me to believe that there won't be at least a couple of those San Francisco 49ers guys coming here with DeMeco Ryans. The story of the day, really in all of sports, and DeMeco was asked about it. Kind of weird that he was asked about it, but Jalen Carter, The misdemeanor arrest warrants for alleged reckless driving. It was brought up to DeMeco Ryans. If the Texans aren't going to take a quarterback, you got to think the discussion would be Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. I'm telling you, I don't know what else could come out about Jalen Carter. I have no idea. I know McShay warned us. But if Jalen Carter falls, and I don't know if he's even going to fall, I don't know that he gets past Seattle, but if Jalen Carter falls to 12, you got to strongly consider, hell, if he falls to 8, we heard Caserio talk about trading up from 12, and I mentioned that in my video yesterday. You got to consider going up there and maybe getting this kid, because the thing I like about DeMeco Ryans, and one of my favorite things about DeMeco Ryans, and one of my favorite possibilities about DeMeco Ryans, is he seems like a very, very good man. He seems like a patient man. He said that he's going to coach hard and love hard. If there is a kid that has immaturity issues, and obviously there's limitations and how far you'll go when it comes to immaturity, but the reality is these kids that come into the NFL, they're 21 years old. I don't even want to go through everything I was doing at 21. Like, I was not a finished product. And I know I keep circling back to the previous regime, but that's really all we have to compare things to here. The previous regime was not patient. They wanted 21-year-olds to be mature, finished products when they came out of college. And in a perfect world, you'd love that. You'd love for every kid to be Jalen Hurts or Bijan Robinson or something like that, and just finest young men you can possibly have. But the reality is there's some great men in the NFL that maybe when they were 21, they hadn't gotten the mentorship that's appropriate in the to develop into men. So if DeMeco Ryans and if has all this charisma and stuff that we talk about, if DeMeco Ryans is looking at stuff like Bill O'Brien, where I'm gonna be a jerk to Deontay Foreman or Kiki QT or whoever, despite the fact it looks like they can help my football team, and I'm just gonna, or Charles Omenihu, because maybe they're not as mature as I'd like. Then what are you really putting DeMeco Ryans' skills to test? Like, are you maximizing the skill set? Like, anyone can mentor Bijan Robinson. Like, anyone can mentor Jalen Hurts, but you put your hand on the shoulder of, a guy who maybe, made some mistakes in college or wasn't fully developed, and then he turns into someone like that. That's where these skills that DeMeco Ryans has are interesting. And that's why, when we talk about Jalen Carter, again, if something else comes out, then yeah, I mean, that obviously changes it. But not even in this instance, if a guy probably doesn't have the best reputation or something, I just feel like DeMeco Ryans is the kind of guy that can get the most out of that guy. So I'm real interested to see what happens with Jalen Carter. I don't anticipate him falling to where the Texans even have to consider that at 12. But if it happens, I would consider it, especially with this coach. What say you? Subscribe, get in the comments. We're going to keep this rolling. We're 6 months in, almost 7 months, already 3,000 deep, and business is getting really fun when it comes to covering this Houston Texans team. This has been the Locker Room. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to Brooks and Dunn tonight. Going to enjoy that. Then Friday, I'm going to Bun B and Friends. So I'm covering all grounds the next couple of days, and I'll keep covering the Texans daily here in the Locker Room. Probably going to do a little live tomorrow or Friday. So get your questions ready. And we will do that. No matter what happens, though, with the Texans, whether they draft Jalen Carter, whether they draft Will Anderson, quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever happens, we are all in this together. Have a good one. Appreciate you.